Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'd like to share a personal physiological baseline model, a new approach to continuous health monitoring. Instead of viewing the body through a few disconnected numbers, we build each person's own baseline so we can detect early, sustained, meaningful changes. In today's clinical practice, we often interpret results using population-based thresholds and make decisions from a single measurement. We typically intervene only when something clearly crosses a cutoff. The biggest missing piece is personal physiological context, which can cause us to miss early changes. This is the limitation of reference ranges. For example, a resting heart rate of 60 to 100 beats per minute is considered normal. But if someone's resting heart rate rises from 58 to 72 beats per minute over 3 weeks, it may still be normal by population standards. Yet for that individual, it could be an abnormal shift that deserves attention. The scientific foundation here is biological variability. Each person has their own normal fluctuation range over time, and it's often much narrower than the differences between individuals. That's why we need baseline-based monitoring at the individual level. A very important concept here is RCV, Reference Change Value. RCV answers the question, when has a change exceeded the expected biological variation for that specific person? However, in continuous monitoring, RCV is rarely applied appropriately or consistently. Continuous monitoring creates a completely new opportunity. Wearables can capture data 24/7 across multiple physiological signals with minute-by-minute and hour-by-hour resolution. But the challenge is this. Without a personal baseline model, it's hard to know what is normal for that person and when a change is truly meaningful. So the definition of a personal physiological baseline is very clear. It is an individual's stable biological state, built from that person's longitudinal data over time. Simply put, we don't compare you to other people, we compare you to yourself. One crucial point, a baseline is not static. It is not a fixed value, and it is not like DNA. A baseline is adaptive and updates over time because our bodies change with age, lifestyle, and environment. Here we clearly separate two concepts. Deviation is when a metric goes beyond a person's normal fluctuation range at a point in time. Sustained deviation is a physiological shift that persists across multiple measurement cycles, and that is the signal we should care about most. To turn this concept into a practical monitoring model, we use 4 very real-world mathematical building blocks. Adaptive mean, the baseline moves with the body. Adaptive variance, each person's own fluctuation band. Standardized deviation, how large the deviation is relative to that person's own norm. Persistence, only repeated, sustained deviation over time should trigger concern. The core of the model is, we do not react to a single data point. An alert should appear only when 3 conditions are met. Exceeds the individual deviation threshold, outside that person's normal range. Persists across multiple days, not just a temporary fluctuation. Multi-signal agreement. Multiple metrics show the same abnormal direction to reduce false alerts. That's why this model is multi-signal monitoring, not a single metric approach. Examples of physiological domains include resting heart rate, sleep, glucose trends, recovery index, and indirect autonomic nervous system indicators. When multiple signals shift together, confidence is much higher. A single signal can be noise, but when multiple signals shift in the same direction, that becomes far more meaningful. This approach reduces the risk of false alarms and helps us focus on changes that truly matter. And I want to be very clear, BioBaseline is not a diagnostic tool. It does not predict stroke, it does not replace physicians, and it does not replace lab testing. It is a layer of personal context that helps us recognize sustained change, so we can be more proactive. So what can BioBaseline support? First, it helps identify sustained physiological changes rather than short-term fluctuations. Second, it provides personal context so clinicians and users can interpret data correctly. Third, it supports chronic condition monitoring through trends. And finally, it helps people take a more proactive role in daily health. In terms of applications, this model is especially promising in 4 groups: monitoring pre-diabetes through glucose trends, monitoring chronic stress, tracking recovery after viral infection, supporting athletes to optimize recovery and training load. Importantly, this model aligns strongly with modern medical trends: remote monitoring, continuous data-driven follow-up from a distance, preventive cardiology, detecting early shifts before clinical events occur, metabolic optimization, tracking glucose and stress trends to guide timely lifestyle changes, personalized medicine, care based on each person's own normal, not the population's normal. Looking ahead, there are 4 key research directions: large-scale prospective studies for long-term validation, linking baseline drift to clinical events, understanding correlations between deviation and outcomes, integrating into clinical workflows so clinicians can use it in real care pathways, establishing calibration standards to standardize and validate data. And here's the core conclusion. Traditional medicine often asks, did it cross the threshold? But a personal baseline model asks a different question. Has it shifted away from this patient's own baseline? This shift in the question makes continuous monitoring more personalized, earlier, and more clinically meaningful. Thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the personal physiological baseline model in continuous monitoring, please contact JBA Brands at jbabrands.ai or support@jbabrands.ai. You can also connect with our offices in the USA, Malaysia, and Vietnam. Thank you.